Good evening, creepers and torturers, and welcome to this year's Halloween Review-a-thon. I am your host, the guy in the mask from the Death Grips ranking, and today I am not going to hide anything for shit. Now, I don't want to sound tough. As a matter of fact, I'm more of a coward. But I always find myself getting confused as to why I never really got scared of any pieces of media when I was younger. Like, I wasn't scared of the pink elephants from Dumbo, I wasn't scared of the walrus from Pingu. Hell, that whole acid tunnel sequence from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory barely even got a reaction out of me. Which honestly brought a heaping dose of surprise to my younger self when I did get scared by something, and that's something that I want to focus on today. Now keep in mind that most of these things I am not scared of anymore. It's just going to be pieces of media that my younger self, aged from 5 to 13, would find scary. I mean, there is one thing that scared me when I was younger and still kinda scares me even today, but I'm gonna put a pin in that and come back to that later. Anyways, what are we starting with?
Hello?
Oh god, no!
I'm back in the cupboard again, you bastard!
Lettuce is an obscure British kids game show that I vividly remember watching when I was younger, mostly out of fear. The show scared me when I was a child, honest, legitimately. It really did scare me, mainly because I was 100% convinced that this was all really happening and how the news wasn't all over it by now. Also, why do these game shows always seem to eternally punish their kid contestants upon losing? It seems oddly sadistic, but this is coming from the same channel that aired Animals at Farthing Woods, so I wouldn't put it past them at this point. So for a very few people who aren't aware, this show follows a set of 3 kids who get kidnapped by one of the escape rooms from Cube, and have to complete a collection of challenges one by one in order to defeat a Spy Kids-looking Megamind offspring and return to Earth. This was a weird show, and pretty innovative for its time too, with more of a virtual tabletop style going towards it. And even the guy playing the titular character of Ludus is having an absolute blast.
Yep, I've turned the friends and family of 3 Earth twerps into holograms. And now, I'm virtually horrible.
Now where is my dehydration gun?
But it also has implications that the contestants' family members are also being held hostage, and if they lose, they're forever trapped in the Blue Tumors game. I bet a few people were emotionally scarred for life because of this show. Both the people watching it and the people competing in it. Just the thought of being trapped in a perpetual state for all eternity, all because little Timmy failed at playing the silver ball from Soho down to Brighton, is admittedly spine-chilling and a bit much for a game show aimed at kids.
Lose, and they'll be uploaded into my game. Forever.
Why do we still even have that covered? Anyways, I would like to think of Ludus as my introduction into sci-fi horror. Because Jesus Christ, I am not going to sign up to it if those are the conditions. I love my family too much to do that. Speaking of sci-fi horror, Monster House. Because I don't think anything about that movie was human. Monster House! Remember that movie? The film about an old man who's married to a house that kills people, and as soon as a group of kids decide to investigate the house to see what's up with it? Yeah, me neither. I remember really liking this movie when I was wee, and even if the animation hasn't aged the best, I still think it's a solid enough movie to get you into that fun Halloween spirit. Except for one singular scene after Nebuchadnezzar suffers a heart attack in the house vowing revenge against our leads. Yeah, sure, it's a dream sequence about the house trying to get our lead, but did you expect for the shadow of a hand to come out of the house to get our lead? Didn't think so. Yeah, it was a lot more intense than I was expecting from a movie like this, because I never saw anything like that scene before. It's a visually abstract way of portraying TJ's worries about the house being alive, and the hand foreshadowing the appearance of Constance later on, who was accidentally killed in a cement freak accident, and her soul possessing the house Nebuchadnezzar was building. Nowadays, I can definitely appreciate a lot more now that I'm a full-time horror fanatic. But man, when I first watched this, I wasn't ready for it. I woke up in a cold sweat thinking about this scene once. It was horrible. And you know what else makes me wake up in a cold sweat? Anything by Lynch. It says David. David Lynch. I can see! Next up on the list, we have Dumbland, a 2002 amateurish animated web series created by famous surrealist provocateur David Lynch. Yeah, David Lynch. You know, the most intelligent filmmaker to mix sexy subtlety with complicated and terrifying surrealism. The guy behind psychological masterpieces like Mulholland Drive, Blue Velvet, and Inland Empire. He made a crude cartoon containing fart jokes and profusive swearing that is so non sequitur that even South Park would think it's too stupid. How did this come to be and why? I don't know, he just had a lot of free time on his hands. Okay, to tell you the truth, I never really watched this one when I was younger. I was only made vaguely aware of it by a Phantom Strider kill count. But it still looked very eerie. Each character jitters back and forth between the two frames that they were gifted, and it gives off a pretty eerie aura about it. Even the dialogue could go from repetitive and crude to downright bizarre, as is with the case when a random retailer shows up to the main character's house to offer him some product, and then he gets pelted in the face, causing his neck to break, and his dying words are about repeating the Gettysburg Address. Sure, it's not groundbreaking by any stretch of the means, but Lynch does always find a way to think outside the box. Which is kind of a shame since the series is shit. Whatever you think or thought Dumbland was gonna be is absolutely correct. The humor is lowbrow and stupid. The plot is on par with 1930s Dadaism to the point where it's pretty much non-existent. And the animation is... Wait, is it even animation? Okay, let's get the elephant out of the room for a moment and talk about the animation. It's somewhat fascinating, and I mean fascinating in all the wrong ways possible. It's nauseatingly simple to the point where there's no color and each character model only has about 4 to 5 frames. It's a style that kind of reminds me of 12 Ounce Mouse in a way, which is not surprising at all considering that the show was heavily influenced by most of David Lynch's movies. And true to fashion, despite it being so simple, it's kinda disturbing. I could also talk about the story, the characters, writing, voice acting, so on and so forth, but there's very little to add outside of them adding to the overall odd atmosphere. And out of his entire filmography, which also includes Eraserhead, a Netflix short film about a detective interrogating a monkey, and a sitcom, this has to easily be the strangest thing that he's ever done. Outside of a music career. Seriously. Yeah, sorry about that. I didn't know how to get to the next segment. Has anybody ever heard of a little show called Trapdoor? I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't. It's a fairly underground, macabre British stop-motion series from the 80s whose wild selection of eccentric characters includes a cynical skull, an abused spider, a kind-hearted brawn that came from the trapdoor itself, and an angry blue chef with a name that only post-rock fans would love. This was introduced to me at a very young age by my own mum, who also grew up with the series, and it was around the same time when I was getting into much darker shows like the works of Tim Burton, so this was right up my alley. And I have no one but her to thank since this series was spectacular. The animation was eccentric and colorful, it had a wickedly dark yet lighthearted sense of humor.
Touch one of them. Look at that! He's eating his breakfast!
Some unbelievably creative character designs, and a pretty fast pace with each episode only being 4 minutes in length, making an entire season's worth a fairly quick watch. Also, the theme song is really damn good. It was a true landmark for British stop-motion animation at the time, and I could go as far as to say that every episode is worth your time. Okay, maybe except for the one where Burke throws Strut down the trapdoor because it gave me Vietnam flashbacks to Pal for Gary from SpongeBob, but outside of that, I loved every last episode of this thing. But they just had to jump scare me with the final episode now, did they? Yep, many sleepless nights were caused by the very final episode of the show, appropriately titled The Big Red Thing, because it's the same guy who terrorized Burke in the very first episode, which is a nice full circle moment. Spoiler alert for a 40-year-old show at this point, Jesus Christ. Barog gets pelted in the face by the thing, causing him to show a bit of anger for the first time. They get into a cliffside fight, and they both die. Okay, that's a pretty depressing way to end things, but it was revealed to be a fake out after the credits. So, cool, Rogue's alive. So, why is there still 29 seconds left? Oh, jeez. This ending has been bothering me for years now. I mean, my best guess is that they were setting up for the Big Red Thing's potential reappearance in a third season, but there never was a third season. The show ended there. I mean, come to think of it, I'm not even sure if everyone survived or not. Did they die? Did they escape? Is Spike dead? What did Carrie see that scared her so much? What happened to Truman after he left his own show? How was Light outsmarted that easily by a bunch of 5th graders? Was Jack Torrance always the caretaker of the Overlook? Did the atmosphere on Mars really open up, or is this something that's happening in Arnold's head before he died? And what do you mean that stalking's a demon? I know it was effective enough to make me remember the show as a whole, even though there are several episodes that are definitely guilty of that. As a matter of fact, I almost went with a Splund for this list because of how disturbing his character design was, but I don't know, I always thought it was more weird than creepy. Ugh, never mind, I take it back. I probably should have talked about the Splund instead. But those last 20 seconds were maybe a little too effective. I mean, effective enough that I had a bit of trouble sleeping for the next few days. But hey, could have been a lot worse, John. Much, much worse. Nickelodeon is a company that I've always had a huge love-hate relationship with. Don't get me wrong, they've come out with some excellent TV shows in the past 30 years, but they're also known for pumping out really, really good TV shows. Also known for either milking the same 20 episodes of SpongeBob over and over while making one of the messiest strings of continuity in cartoon history by making several spin-offs and movies, one of which Hillenburg was entirely against because it simply made no sense, or they just squeeze out 8 different projects of the same IP in the span of a year. Like, come on guys, not even Drake is that petty. Hey guys, I know you're not very happy about the current state the show's in right now, but hey look, we have 2 movies that Netflix produced that you might enjoy. And hey, just in case you're very sick of seeing this family, we also have this spin-off of one of the lesser characters that also got its Netflix-produced movie. And hey, if you're sick of animation in general, why not try out this series in live action that also has its set of movies? You like these ones now, right? Right! Right! Hey, this is Chris Savino. Go home, you're drunk. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah, Yellow Cheese God. I love SpongeBob. At least I'm trying to love it. Nickelodeon's been making it a lot harder as of late, but I loved it well enough. But I was never a huge fan of it, more so a casual viewer who was more into the zanier elements and running gags throughout episodes. So when something like SB129 comes along, I felt like I was being mugged. It was such a drastic tonal shift for me when I was younger, going from your typical Bikini Bottom antics to Squidward being flash frozen into the future and now has to find his way back.
Holy crap!
From the chrome future of Bikini Bottom to teleporting two-headed Patricks to facing off against the duo's more primal self, that's already bizarre enough. But then the handle of the time machine breaks and Squidward ends up here. Wherever here is. For a while I had no clue what to make of this scene. I mean, the switch did land on it being far into the future when it broke, but never how far. So, does this mean that Squiddy here has gone so far into the future that he broke through space and time and ended up in some sort of limbo? Or is this him presumably walking around in a place where the concept of time has ceased completely? The end of the universe, if you will. But who knows, maybe this means absolute dick and Hillenburg just wanted an excuse to reset the whole episode by the end. Maybe that's why the time machine ended up sending Squidward back to present day by the end, even though it was clearly broken. But even with that, what scares me the most is when Squidward ends up finding the time machine and him wishing to go home. All I was wondering is what's outside that door? If the guy managed to break through limbo to return to the time machine, then what's under limbo? Karsten Rundquist did a pretty fantastic analysis of this episode that tried to tie the events of it all back to Friedrich Nietzsche's studies on eternal recurrence, and I highly recommend you check it out. It's very well researched and definitely succeeds at the attempt of making sense of the bleak surrealism on play here. But still, what is behind that door? Is it bears? Is it a dimension of bears? I don't know. I pretty much have to accept anything at this point. But wait, that means... So bottom line, how am I more scared of this now than anything I've covered in this video so far? Well, simply because I'm a massive pussy. That's it, go home. Again, sorry if I didn't cover any internet-related ones for this. I'm trying to stay well away from that well as much as possible, because if I was to talk about the things on the internet that scarred me when I was younger, we'd be here all day. But if you're wondering about that pin from earlier, don't worry. Enlightenment will come next week. Oh god.
Coming soon on the next episode of that.
Yeah, you know exactly what this means. Tugger is pulling a Monica. He has gained sentience and is trying desperately to escape as soon as possible. But how are you supposed to win anything if your film looks like this?